Hello and welcome to this video. So I'll be breaking down these three previous graphics I've made on my live streams. As always, there will be a two-letter combination just for these videos, just because there are breakdowns, so I'm expecting them to be shorter. And if you've missed my previous live streams, make sure to tune in when I'm live streaming next, usually every 2 days or so. But yeah, see you and let's get into it. So as you can see here, we've got this design of Remy Simonson. So what we're going to do is I'm just going to walk through what I've done finish to start. So we're going to be working backwards through the design. I've made a color lookup layer to start with, just one of my Ethan J design ones that you can find on Ethan's website. It's just a pretty simple color lookup pack that I got. I think it was like $30 or something, and we can see what it looks like on 100%. I didn't really like how the blues were too blue, so what I've done is I've just dropped that down to around 40% to draw out more of the blues within the color, but not go too far away from what the Sydney colors usually are. So now we're going to jump into our camera raw and what I've done for the camera raw. Once it loads, what I've done here is I've increased the exposure to around +10 and just increased the contrast, just because I had some of the colors not really matching. I always like to increase the clarity just around 20%, just because it gives a little bit of burst to the image, and then I've increased the texture. Next, what I've done is I've increased the grain to around 16% and added a little bit of vignette, which I didn't previously add. So now we'll hide that. And as you can see, we've got a few balls with motion blur around this side. So what I've done here is we'll go directly into the layer. So what I started with is I used my shape tool and then constricted the path by holding down shift, like so, to mask out the ball from the background. And then I went to filter other, just to get rid of the harsh background that I was having. And what I did for the blur is all I did is just angle them how I wanted and then played around with the blur angle. Always like to have my pixels for this between 30 to 40. And we can just see how it gives the image just a little bit of depth. What I've done here is I've added the Sydney logo into the top right corner. And now, since we've already discussed what's in our foreground, we'll move down to our text. For our text, I chose a Monument extended font, just with 2 rectangles in the background with an outer glow, just that kind of box style effect. I use it a lot in graphics I do for my sports club. Just makes the text look a bit more fancy. I didn't really want to go with the white and blue, just because Sydney's main color in the kit is their blue, and it just doesn't look too nice with that white on blue with a blue style background. So the blue looks just a lot more nicer, as you can see there. Now we'll move on to the main backing image, which is the studio photo of Remy. As you can see already, we've done some pretty heavy color correction. If you've watched my previous videos or live streams, you would know what I walk through with this, but I'll just do a quick rundown. So what I do is I start with my white brush. I turn the opacity down to around 30% and draw over the highlights on the image using a soft brush, like so. And also have the layer style set to overlay. And then I'll do the same thing, but for my shadows, I'll knock it down to around 20% and draw over the shadows on the image. And we can see the difference that this makes. For my color lookup, what I'll do is I come to my adjustment layers, which is here. And then I come to color lookup. And then I choose 3 strip. And as we can see here, we've got 3 strips selected, and it just gives that really orangey kind of feel. Now I'll discuss what I've done with the eyes. So what I've done here is I've again come to my adjustment layers, come to color fill, and then chosen this kind of greeny aqua color, and just purposely drawn where the actual eye is, not the entire eye. Then blacked out behind the eye and just drawn out the blues from Remy's eyes, and then increased the exposure just to kind of get that real green glow effect. And I've repeated that process on the same smaller image of Remy with the ball, and I will talk through the camera raw filter for both of them. So what I've done here is I've just increased the exposure slightly, and the texture and the clarity. as well as increasing the sharpness to around 40 just because I didn't want it too heavy, but then decreasing the oranges just to get a bit more of that red feel within the image. And behind the studio photo of Remy, I've just added some shadow. So what I've done here is I've created a new layer, turned my opacity back up to around 100%, knocked the flow down to around 20%, and then just made some shadows behind her, like so. Now I will talk about the circles in the foreground. So what I've done here for these circles, as you can see, they're all plastered around the background. All I've done here is I've just come to my shapes tool, change it from path to shape. It might be on shape path, vice versa. Change this to a blue color and then just created shapes. But for each individual shape, I've come to my filter layer and then gone to displace, converted it to a smart object, played around with the horizontal scale, all that kind of stuff. And then I've added a displacement layer in, displacement map in, sorry. Just whatever really works. I've added all that to the images, and then within each circle, I've just added some outer glow to them just so they stay a bit away from the foreground. And now we get to the very background. All I've done here is, this was a suggestion from a viewer, is I've made a rectangle like so. So I'll hide all these just to show what I've done. Made a real small rectangle, come to skew, and then change the angle of it like so, and then just repeated that across, adding blues and whites in. And then I went with a lighter blue background to kind of contrast the blue and white colors. So this is how I made this Remy one. Let's move on to the Lisandro Martinez design. Again, we're going to start from top to bottom with this. I went for a more grungy kind of feel with this one. I really liked the background that we started with, but let's again just talk from top to bottom. Again, it's kind of that same repeated process, just increasing the exposure slightly, the texture and the clarity. I played around with a bit of the yellows in this just because I was getting a bit too much yellow coming from this bottom right image here where my mouse is. And then I really heavily increased the grain and just added a little bit of vignette. As you can see, there's a bit of a white border coming on the side, so I just added a grunge border in that you can find from Envato Elements, or if you just search them up on Google. And just a old paper texture style, which would have been in my texture pack giveaway. As you can see in the top right corner, it's just the Man United logo. And again, this is the same font as Remy's, which is just the Monument Extended Bold. All I did here is just increase the Lisandro for his first name and decrease the second name, just because his second name is smaller than his first name, and you kind of want that balance between text size to make your typography look nice. Again, it's just for the lighting, it's a really repeated process with what I've done for my lighting. As you can see, I've really heavily gone heavy on the shadows and repeated the same processes as I've discussed with Remy. But because this original image was a bit too, the reds weren't really matching the other kit, just because the conditions the photos were taken in were a lot different. All I've done is just added a selective color layer and played around with the reds, really increased the cyan and also the blacks, and then put 2 3-strip color layers on it just because I didn't really like the colors that I was getting. But now looking back on that, I could have probably matched it without the 3 strips. And the camera raw that I was using was the exact same as the other images, just playing around a little bit, just dropping the exposure, the contrast, really turning that texture up to around 100, and same with that sharpening, I went with 70 for both. But for these two Lisandro images, I think I went with around, here we go, we'll see, yeah, around 15, and the contrast exposure up a bit to around 30, and the texture around 95, clarity up a little bit as well, and sharpening up as well. And we can see the difference that our adjustment layers make to the image. And behind this Lisandro, I've just made a bit of a shadowy effect and repeated the same steps for the massive Lisandro image here. All I've done for this one is I've made a rectangle shape, chucked an image of Old Trafford on it, and then put a gradient map with our blacks on the left, reds in the middle, and whites on the end, and set it to just normal. Couldn't really find any layer styles that worked. And as we can see behind, there are 2 Man United Red Devils. So all I did for this was I came to my erase tool and chose Magic Eraser, and then just got rid of all the colors around the devil until it all worked and came up well, like so. Yada yada yada. Get rid of everything, like so. Gets rid of all the colors and stuff you need around, and then I just masked the rest of it out. And then when I came back in, so with the red devil on the frame, all I did was I set my fill to 0%, like so, and then came to my adjustment layers, my layer styles, and then set the stroke to 3, I think it was. And then for our background, all I've done here is it's just a Manchester United logo taken from creating a pattern through libraries. And then I've set it to overlay, and it's got this really nice kind of carpety background style feel. And then all I've also done to add on the top of it is just a little bit of noise to get that carpet kind of feel. Now onto the Richarlison one. This one was a bit different. I just wanted some kind of grungy kind of feel I was getting from it. This was from my second last previous stream when this video comes out, but when I was finishing it, my internet cut out and I didn't finish it till the next previous stream. As always, we'll work back to front. I just increased the exposure slightly and the contrast, as well as just doing the same 20 and 10 for texture and clarity, but we'll work into our color grading where things get tasty. I've just increased the mid-tone slightly with a bit of red because we'll see the difference that it makes. It just was looking a little bit too green for me, so I really drew those reds back into the frame. Now we'll move down to our effects. I put our grain around 30 and the vignetting down. And again, I just really wanted those reds back within the image, so I increased the red primary on our calibration to around 20% for our hue, and same for the saturation, just sitting at 22 for that one. I couldn't really find a color lookup layer that works, so again, I went with an Ethan J Design one, just to make it pop 8.3. And as we can see here, all I've done for our sides is just made some triangles like so. If it lets me make them, probably won't. So all I've done here is just made some triangles. It's about to crash. Oh, it's over fucking here. Yeah, so all I've done here is made some triangles and just repeated that process throughout the entire frame, and then added a displacement map and then changed the color of it like so. And as you can see here again, I just added a 3-strip lookup to it and then added some shadowing on the bottom. If I took my time on this, I would have probably added more shadow onto the flag of Brazil, just because we've got our light coming from the bottom side. So I would have lit this side up and then decreased the shadow on this side. Again, the camera raw filter is the exact same as the previous images, just increasing the exposure a little bit more just because this image was dark. I didn't really add too much sharpness on it just because the image wasn't too high quality. Just behind the flag, I added some shadow just to separate it from the previous images. And you can see this text with Richarlison. All I've done here is just monument extended. And now we get down to this section. So all I did for this was decrease the fill of the text, so I duplicated it. Then I made it a smart object and came to liquefy. And I will show you what I did for my liquefy. All I did was just tap the 12 button clockwise button once and then got that kind of wavy style text. And then for my background, I took the greens from Richarlison's kit and the Brazilian flag to end up making this. Thanks everyone for watching. Appreciate your time. Make sure you again tune in to another live stream when you can. And yeah, thank you for watching. See ya.